Lads, lasses and the rest of the masses, welcome back to the channel. We're just over a week into the ongoing January transfer window, so today I thought I'd sit down and discuss some rumours, options and my personal thoughts on those potential moves. First, let's highlight a few positions that I personally see as problematic areas for Chelsea right now: striker, left wing, centre mid and centre back. Let's start with that last one, centre back. Now, it's been spoken about in the past that Enzo Maresca notoriously wanted Chelsea to go for a new centre-back in the summer window, with the club opting to bring in players such as Joao Felix and Kin and Dewsbury Hall instead. Now, midfield depth is certainly important, and we'll discuss that issue a little later, but with the problematic nature of our injury record at centre-back, I think the manager's concern was justified. Now, you can't always predict that players are going to get injured, but in the case of Wesley Fofana, it always seemed like it was just a matter of time before it happened. With him now being reportedly out until the end of the season, as well as Benoit Badiashile also out for an extended period of time, we have two gaps to fill in that area. So what do we do? Well, one of those spots has already been claimed by new first team member Joshua Chempong, who's recently been called up from the academy and has impressed in his small amount of minutes thus far, but that leaves one more spot to fill. With Tosin Adarabioyo and Axel Disasi both rather out of form and or favour, do we need to bring in a new centre-back, or is there other options available to us? Crystal Palace might be a place that Chelsea are looking towards according to reports, with the two targets both being ex-Chelsea players. The first is a move for the main man in that defence, Mark Gay, who has been rather impressive ever since he left the Blues back in 2021, becoming a full-fledged England international and a mainstay of the solid Palace defence. However, personally I don't see this move happening, and neither do I want it to. Firstly, Gay is a great player, but doesn't really solve the issues we have back there. Chelsea's main weakness at the back this season has been aerial balls, and the small-statured Gay is not the solution in my opinion, especially with his rather average aerial win rate. Secondly, it doesn't make sense from a business perspective. His current market value according to Transfermarkt is 45 million euros, which we know would massively inflate to upwards of 60 to 70 million due to his importance to the club. Not only that, but Chelsea have a 20% sell-on clause for him, so if he were to leave to another club for that 70 million, Chelsea would gain around 14 million from that sale, which gets us the majority of the 23 we sold him for back. The second option is of course Trevor Chalobah. The 25-year-old is out on loan at Palace from us, and despite initial reports that he doesn't have a recall clause in his deal, it seems to have been confirmed that that is not true, and we do have the option of recalling him. This one seems much more likely in my opinion, with him easily being able to fit back into the fold and not costing us a massive amount to do, but there are a few problems. Firstly, I don't think that he'd want to come back here after the way the club treated him. He's had a pretty good season so far at Palace, only losing 3 times when he's been in the side, and 2 of those were narrow 1-0 defeats to Liverpool and Forest, and he seems to have found a place where he's wanted or needed. Secondly, again, he doesn't fix that issue I spoke about. Despite being 6'3", Trevor has never really been good aerially, and he has an even worse aerials 1/90 than Gay does. Personally, I think it's better if we let him complete his loan than try and cash out for him in the summer for some pure profit. However, there is another player that we've already recalled from loan that might be the solution: the young ex-Boca Juniors centre-back Aaron Anselmino. Chelsea clearly rate the 19-year-old very highly, as we've decided to accelerate his career by recalling him early and trying to get him playing at a higher level already. And though he doesn't fix that aerial issue that I've been speaking about, his other metrics are so impressive that you can almost overlook it. Another thing to note is that he impressively has 5 goal contributions so far, and as Chelsea are a team that really needs goals from all areas of the pitch, this would be a welcome addition. Obviously these are in a much weaker league, so need to be taken with a pinch of salt, but he passes the eye test too in my opinion, and is a certain option for the future. But that's the main issue with this one: he's for the future and we need something for now. Enzo Maresca has implied that he might be staying at Chelsea, mentioning in an interview that Aaron would need to find a home and get settled in England, but this acclimatisation period and lack of training with the first team means that he likely won't play for many weeks or months, if at all this season. There's been talks of him possibly going back out on loan to a stronger league in Ligue 1, joining our sister club RC Strasbourg for the remainder of the season. But there's one issue with this: clubs are only allowed to have 3 players on loan at one club, at a maximum, and Chelsea already have 3 at Strasbourg already: Georgi Petrovic, Caleb Wiley and Andre Santos, who we'll talk about later on as well. So the 2 options for us are that we either keep Anselmino in the squad and have to prep him for the first team, or we send someone to Strasbourg after recalling someone else. Personally, for the centre-back spot, I wouldn't bring in anyone. There's no need to panic buy, as the squad is good enough to get us top 4, which is our target this season, and I don't want a repeat of the last time this happened with us panic buying Disasi late on because of injuries. We can assess this area when we get to the summer. But what about the midfield? Centre mid has also been an interesting debate as of late. Caicedo and Enzo are fantastic but can't play every game, Lavia is injury prone, and all of Cesare Casadei, Carney Chukwuemeka, Kiernan Dewsbury Hall, Christopher Nkunku and Joao Felix seem unsettled or have been in the past. With us inverting a fullback into our midfield 4, that leaves us with 3 spots that need to be filled, with rotation options as well. Let's talk options in the deeper role. We have Caicedo, Enzo, Lavia, Raksaki at a push. Vega can also play there, but he's our rotational left-back player, so that could be problematic too. The issue is we have far too many attacking midfielders and not enough deeper players. Even Enzo, who is great as a deep-lying playmaker, is more of an 8. Casadei, Dewsbury Hall, Nkunku, Felix, Carney, they are all players that want to be further up the pitch. And when we have a star player like Cole Palmer playing in that advanced position, there is simply not enough room for all of them, and that's why they've been getting unsettled. We could see a large amount of departures if rumour is to be believed. Casadei might be headed back to Italy, Carney is likely leaving permanently, and Nkunku has been seen as a player that could leave this window if not in the summer. Kiernan Dewsbury Hall is looking likely to be sold or loan out. If we are hemorrhaging that amount of players, we will need to bring in at least one in, or shift the team around. For our team to have balance, in my opinion, we need 5 to 6 deeper midfield options in the squad, with 3 players that can play in the 10. For those deeper midfielders, if we exclude the rumoured departures, we have Enzo, Lavia, Caicedo and 2 holes to fill, perhaps 3. One of these is a no-brainer in my opinion because it solves 2 problems at once. If we want to send Anselmino out to Strasbourg and we need to recall a player from there, and we need a deeper midfield player to come into the team, recalling Andre Santos is absolutely the right move to make. The kid is definitely good enough to play for us, and it opens up that space for Aaron to go to France. My only concern with this one is, of course, recalling Andre Santos early might hamper his development, but I think he's good enough to play for the team, so I'm not really sure that would be the case. So that's one, but what about the other? Well, we've seen reports about a certain player, Kobbie Mainoo. He's not had the greatest time at United this season, but to be quite fair, neither has anyone else. They've all been pretty tragic. A move away from that toxic environment could be exactly what the young England international needs. Just look at what happened for Jadon Sancho. I don't think this will happen though. He is Manchester through and through. I don't expect him to want to leave, especially considering he's been one of the mainstays of this United team for quite a while now. He's already got a cemented place in a Big Six team. Why would he throw that away to play second fiddle to Caicedo and Enzo? It's not a move that makes sense, regardless of how poor United have been. Another issue I have with this is that he's a relatively short midfielder, and we lack height in that area already. I would prefer to bring in slightly bigger guys into the centre. Another option is recalling Leslie Ugochukwu from Southampton, who would increase the height in that position, and has played for the Chelsea first team before, so isn't going to get overwhelmed there. He really hasn't had the best loan at the Saints, with them rarely playing him or even including him in the squad at all. I think he deserves much better treatment than that, and to be quite honest, playing for a team that gets battered every week regardless of who's playing is not helping his development at all. I think he could 100% play in our rotational games in the Conference League and Cups, and should definitely be an option that we look at. For our 6th optional choice, I would simply put faith in Samuel Raksaki, who can step in when needed but won't have to play every game. Overall, I would have the pecking order as Caicedo, Lavia, Enzo, Santos, Leslie and then Sam. That's a very solid midfield in my opinion, even with Lavia currently injured. But we need 3 players that can play that 10 role too. One is of course Palmer, and then 2 more. My choices are Joao Felix and Christopher Nkunku. One for the first team, one for the rotation team, and one for the bench. Now I know that Nkunku is unsettled, but I think that's due to the fact that he's been shoehorned in at striker for the majority of his appearances. He is much better as a 10, and we've seen how good he can be in that position when he's played there in the Conference League with Guiu ahead of him. For me, it's another 2 birds with 1 stone situation here. We can get him playing in a better suited position, and then bring in a new striker to make up for him moving further back. So let's talk about strikers. What about them? Currently we only have 2 senior striking options, Nicholas Jackson and Mark Guiu. I'm a big believer of the idea that a good team that plays 1 central striker needs 3 strikers in the squad. The starter, an option for other competitions, and then a bench/rotational option that has a different profile to your starter. For example, if you have a target man as your starting striker, you need a more mobile, pacey striker for the bench, and vice versa. Our starting striker is of course Nicholas Jackson, and he will be for the foreseeable future. That option for other competitions is quite clearly Mark Guiu, who's the top goalscorer in the Conference League, but we do not have that different profile striker in the squad. Nkunku has been filling this hole, but he isn't what we need there, so personally for me we need to spend cash bringing in someone new. And our scouts have already identified 3 prime options for this role: Samu, John Duran and Liam Delap. all different to Jackson, all provide competition to the Senegalese, and are all capable of scoring goals. My personal favourite of these players would be Samu. I think he's an absolute monster of a man who could help us when we play those low block sides that force us to swing in crosses. He has 18 goals and 2 assists in 22 games in all comps so far, a fantastic return. That is a big problem for us though. He's on fire, he's starting most games at Porto, so he's going to be massively expensive. His release clause is 100 million euros, and I don't think Porto would let us buy him for anything less than that. Duran is another excellent option. He's a fantastic impact substitute, always scores goals off of the bench for Villa. He's left-footed, so that gives us a different option there, and has a pretty good goal return. He has 12 goals in 26 games in all comps, which may not sound like much, but that's because he doesn't play many minutes. He's only played 976 minutes this season. That's a goal every 81 minutes, or 1.1066 per 90, putting him in the top 1% of strikers, the 99th percentile, in all of the top 5 leagues for that stat. That is an incredibly efficient goal return, and personally would be an excellent signing if we could snag him. His market value is around 40 million euros, which again would likely increase to around 60, but I think he's worth the gamble on. The issue is, I'm not sure if he'd want to move, considering how well he's doing at Villa, especially midway through the season. Perhaps he'd wait until the summer to see if we got top 4, and if we did, that would sway him. We can't tell. Lastly is Liam Delap, who recently caused us a lot of problems in our 2-0 defeat to Ipswich. This one is the most likely in my opinion for a few reasons. Ipswich are flirting with relegation this season, and Delap would likely want to keep playing in the Premier League. Ipswich, as a smaller side, would welcome the added funds from his sale, and in general I don't think anyone in their right mind would reject a move to Chelsea if they were offered it, when they currently play for a team like Ipswich. That would be career suicide in my opinion. He's absolutely the cheapest option too, with his valuation being around 25 million euros, and with his decent goal contribution return, 10 G/A in 20 matches for Ipswich, I think he'd be a very smart buy for a rotational bench option who could also try to provide competition for Jackson. Lastly, I just want to talk about the left wing spot. Due to Misha Mudrik's recent suspension and reports about a return is on the cards non-existent, it's almost like we have lost a first team player. Now this hole was quickly filled by new first teamer Tyreek George, who's done rather well in his limited appearances, but it's clear from his lack of game time off of the bench that Enzo Maresca doesn't truly see him as a rotational option for the left side, with Pedro Neto and Madueke recently taking that spot when Sancho leaves the field. I think he's good enough to fill it in this position, and eventually I reckon Enzo will sweeten on him as he plays more, but there has been recent reports of a new signing being a possibility. That is of course Borussia Dortmund's young English sensation Jamie Bino Gittins. The 20-year-old already has 9 goals and 5 assists from that left wing spot for the German outfit this season, which is a rather big improvement over any of our wingers. That being said, again the big issue is the price tag. Touted at 50 million euros, this looks like an unfeasible transfer at first glance. However, there is a small spanner in the works, and that's Dortmund's reported interest in Carney Chukwuemeka. With us very willing to let the young midfielder go, there's a possibility for some kind of cash plus player swap deal to be negotiated, though with Bino Gittins' form I'd imagine the yellow and black attack would be very reluctant to do this. Personally I think he'd be a very good player for us if we were able to pull it off, I just don't expect it to happen. And before we wrap this up, there's a few other deals that should happen in my opinion. Ben Chilwell needs to find a new home, as does David Washington, who's likely to go out on loan. And to summarise, let's take a look at the ins and outs I would be trying to make if I were Chelsea. For the ins, Duran or Delap, more likely Delap, Andre Santos recall and Leslie Ugochukwu recall. Outs, Carney, Cassidy, Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, Chilwell and Washington on loan, with Anselmino going to Strasbourg. With that being said, of course all of this is just a matter of if those players rumoured to be leaving do leave. If they stay, then not much change needs to be made, nor do I expect it to be. I suppose we'll have to wait and see what develops in the coming weeks. But if you can't wait until then, perhaps watch another one of my videos like this one in the meantime. Thank you guys so much for watching as ever, and remember, in the rain or in the dry, keep that blue flag flying high. Come on you Blues!